Hi there, welcome to the Lighthouse Sessions. Today I have my friend Deena Kordt with me, and I say friend, we just met literally 26 minutes ago, but we are fast friends. Deena, why don't you tell my audience a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Well, thank you, Jeff. I am so pleased that you reached out and connected with me because I trust the universe in all of its beautiful timing. And uh, what I am doing right now is a very heart-centered community that I'm building. And this started all around the topic of divorce. And I have excitedly taken on the publishing actually of a magazine. And I changed that magazine to be 100% digital and include life change focus because people are going through life changes all the time. And some of these are expected and many are unexpected. So what I love doing is connecting people with the experts, the professionals that are out there that are very credible and experienced, many of them personally, and that's what's gotten them into doing what they're doing. And I can connect people with these experts in this community. There's a podcast available, there's blog, newsletters, again, these magazines that go out, and we have events where people can meet the experts and ask their questions. And just it's a way that I can help make a difference, create some positive impact, support people through the tough times. And I'm just excited when I meet other people that are also very heart-centered doing this and building community like yourself, Jeff. And I know that I can trust that the right people always show up and they are there caring just as much. And I think the underlying message through all of the stuff that I've done, even prior to my current work, is to let people know they aren't alone. So please don't give up. You're not alone. There's many who care and definitely want to help you.
I love that. And honestly, that was my theme behind the Lighthouse Sessions. It's not that I'm bright, it's that I bring bright people out who shine light. And most importantly, when it comes to entrepreneurs, they all suffer in silence. They will say, I feel so alone, I'm isolated. And what I've found is when you focus on building community, and I think that's a thread that ties us together, the right people magically appear and they have solutions to problems you didn't know you had yet, but they help you get there faster. And I think it's fascinating that you and I are connected through so many threads in our network. So you're officially part of the Lighthouse family now. So welcome. Now let's talk. So first of all, I want to ask about, or I want to point something out, and I want to ask your opinion on it. One of the things I love about entrepreneurs is the hardest question is tell me what you do, because it's a checklist, not everybody, BNI says you need to have your single 30-second thread. And I'm like, oh my God, it changes depending on time of day. But one of the things I love about podcasts is it does bring people together and you get to know very quickly who your audience is and what they're concerned about. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, definitely. I love the multimedia platforms that we can reach people in and have that community, because people take in information differently or they discover differently. And yeah, I think it's really important that we connect with other community minded individuals and they're there to make a positive impact.
Excellent. Now, my gut's telling me our conversation, the theme we're going to discuss today is the word and. So for our listeners, Deena and I, we were talking about the perception that either you are philanthropic and you're going to run a nonprofit, or you're an entrepreneur and you're going to have money and be successful. Are you okay if we continue that thread? Because I think I see a lot of people saying, oh, I'm going to give up my job, I'm going to sell my business, and I'm going to go do good in the world. I feel personally you're from a better place if you try to do both.
I totally agree. And yes, I'm okay with going down that path.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about the beliefs that a lot of people have. And, I'm going to say a word, everybody, you go plug your ears, you're going to be shocked. The word is monetize. And Deena, I think you and I are going to have fun on this one, because a lot of people, they hear the word monetize and they immediately go to that sleazy car salesman trying to sell you a lemon. Or personally, I love those late night commercials, the infomercials. They crack me up. I always laugh at them and I'm like, nobody's that stupid. They're going to buy that thing. And then, oh, somebody bought 100 units. Wow. But I think monetize has become a dirty word. And I think you and I need to bring it back in style. Is that a good comment?
I agree. Monetize, I hear greed. And I think we have these subconscious paradigms that crisscross in there as, associated with some of these words, especially around money.
And I think once we look at the negative, and I would just ask you, as you're listening to this, what does the word monetize bring up in you? Almost always it's greed, which quickly leads to shame, which quickly leads to money's evil, therefore I don't want it, keep it. And I personally think, we were talking about this, billionaire philanthropy sounds fascinating to me because, I might go downtown Edmonton today and I can drop a few loonies or toonies into somebody's cup and, maybe they eat today, maybe they get a drink, maybe they get something warm in their bellies, but tomorrow they're going to wake up and they're going to be doing the same thing. Whereas if I'm a billionaire, I can build a shelter, I can build schools, there's so much more we can do.
Yes, I totally agree. And it's like you said, that word and. So I can do this and do that. I can monetize, I can have a business, but I can also create positive impact. And I think if you can find a way to do both with your work and feel the strength of your purpose in that, then it's a beautiful partnership.
I love that purpose word. And, something very strange, I don't share much, but I did a deep dive study on billionaires. And it's fascinating because there are three types of billionaires. They're the ones who fell into it by luck. They sort of inherited it or won lottery. They're the ones who took it by force. We don't want to emulate them. They're oligarchs and terrorists and pirates and things. And then the third group is I'm going to say self-made, even though none of them will use that word, but they built it from scratch in their lifetime. And the fascinating thing to me, I study that third group because they interest me and I think there's lessons to learn, but every single one of them had intense hardship in their life. They overcame that hardship and they said never again. And they found, I'm going to chase money to solve that problem. And then somewhere along the way, they found themselves. They did the inner work because you can't get and attract and keep money unless you do inner work. They did the work, found themselves, and then they found that they needed the purpose. So it was funny because they all did it out of survival. And then they got to a point where I've got all the money I could possibly need. I'm okay. And then it turned into how can I give back? And I actually interviewed somebody who worked with Bill Gates. And it's fascinating because the world wants to say he's evil. And I will say, yes, Windows is evil. It's had its share of bugs, but I don't think he's evil. And they said he's one of the sweetest guys because he's agonizing over how do we eliminate death by airborne, waterborne disease. And yet everybody's, oh, he's a billionaire, he's evil. So what I learned was you can't become the billionaire by building it unless you believe in helping others and giving back. So a heavy underline on the word and.
Yeah, that's a great point. I would like to be signed up for that club too. It'd be awesome. What I do is so much a passion project, and it's something that I want sustainable so that it can continue to help people, because it takes longer with the demographic that I work with, especially when we're talking about divorce and abuse, but also life changes in general. People are going through some chaos. They're feeling stuck. They feel some embarrassment, some shame, some failure, and feeling alone, and they don't know who to ask or who to trust. And so it does take a longer time for them to maybe even find our community, but also then to lean into the trust part of it. So if it isn't sustainable, it'll disappear before they're they're ready to connect with that help.
And I think given your specific audience, trust is critical. In traditional marketing, they say we need 13 touches to establish trust. Somebody who's been through a major life change, whatever that change is, but specifically domestic violence or divorce, big changes, they're going to need more time to build trust.
Yeah, very true. I've heard upwards of 18 and over 20 times.
Well, and that assumes that each interaction is consistent and builds trust. Because again, if you promise, hey, I'm going to publish my virtual magazine every quarter, and you skip a quarter, they're going to go back several steps because you weren't there for them when they needed you. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, I agree. It's as basic as that. It's very important to me, that integrity of my word, and that they know that they can count on what I've committed to. And that works for the experts and professionals in my community as well, because what they are doing is building a network of trusted, credible referral partners amongst themselves. And it's just a beautiful thing when I see them partner up and they're running their own workshops and they've met in this community and they now recognize we can amplify the impact and the positive support for people if we work together. Hey, I see where we can collaborate. And so those partnerships and those referrals are part of this community. And it's just amazing when you bring those type of people together and then they now take this on and go beyond even what we're doing right here.
I love that. And you actually touched on something else I discovered about billionaires. Almost every single one of them, if somebody asks, are you self-made? They say that's ridiculous. Nobody is. And they all talked about community and collaboration. And I'm going to guess some are better at it than others. But every single one I've studied, and there's so much information out there. You can study them easily. They've written books, they've got podcasts. But every single one of them talks about the relationships that brought the thing they needed to them at the time they needed it so that they could move on. And it's not often I get to have conversations. Well, it's more often now with the podcast. But when I meet a fellow community builder, it fascinates me because you figured out your way, I figured out my way. And my thought is, what if we bring all the community people together and we all figure it out together? Because I guarantee you've thought of things that I'll never comprehend. I've thought of things that don't mean anything to you. But when you so let's talk about the community aspect from an entrepreneur's point of view. Who's in your community and why do they come to you?
That's a great question, Jeff. I don't really always know why. I don't hear from them necessarily why, except they're like, I want to be here. This is where I can show my expertise that's specific to this type of an audience. So it's a very ideal client base that is looking specifically for support around divorce, abuse, and major life changes. But they also hear it's word of mouth. I get many times introduced to someone who's in the community, bringing in more people and saying, you need to be here too. This is where we need your expertise. We need your encouragement, inspiration. We need your story. So some of the people in the community aren't necessarily here as a service provider, but they're also here to support because they've come out of these type of situations and they want to use what they've experienced, the lessons they've learned, to encourage and uplift others. So there's a variety of ways that they end up in this community.
I love it. And I think the thing that fascinates me is the layers of the community, because as you alluded to, you've got yourself and the service providers, and then there's the consumer of, sorry, that's a terrible word, but, the recipient of,
Yes.
of the services. We all win, especially as service providers, when, for example, and I'm going to overgeneralize and you're going to fill in the gaps, if I'm somebody going through divorce, odds are, yes, I need to have a divorce attorney or somebody like that. Then I probably need somebody to help me find a place to live. Then I need somebody to help me find a job. Like there's a sequence that repeats over and over. And what people, when you think in the traditional terms of competitors, which is my least favorite C, oh, somehow we're competitors. No, we're not. If you serve women going through divorce and someone else serves women going through divorce, the community you two bring together adds value to everybody.
I totally agree. When I am asked by business mentors, who's your competition? I say, I don't know. And I honestly hope I get to meet them so that we can work together, because I did zero market research, really, honestly, of any kind. I just felt like, let's just do this. I don't need to know who else I'm competing against. And what's happened is I have been introduced now to those that are doing similar work, maybe not necessarily exactly the same, but they also have that same heart. And if we're meant to serve more people, we're better to team up. And so I couldn't agree with you more, Jeff, on that. I really do appreciate the connections that have come through with the work that I'm doing, because when I first started, I didn't even realize all the organizations. I'm still learning about the organizations that are out there, for instance, who support families around domestic violence. And it's so encouraging to hear, and there's another, there are people out there doing this very important work that's needed. And I so admire them. I'm so grateful to know that. And I quite often have people come to me and say, I have a friend or a family member that's in this situation. Who can you point me towards? And usually it's, what lawyer do you know? And there's more resources available. There are alternative ways to navigate some of these very difficult challenges. So that is so amazing to me, that as I'm learning what's available, then I have these platforms that I can now connect people.
Well, and I think the big thing, especially in something very emotionally charged like divorce, whether it's amicable or otherwise, we don't know what we don't know. And it's hard to stop, as somebody going through that, they're in a nervous system freeze state. They're going through a lot of trauma. They're not rational and thinking about 5 steps ahead. And what I love about a good network is, sometimes, and I've met these people, a divorce attorney will say, well, actually, you need a arbitrator or a mediation or something else. And then I think what's always missed or often missed is, once the divorce is final, then you need to maybe look at, do you and your family need counseling? Do you need, what's the next step in your healing? And it's like, divorce is not a one and done and then, yay, we're done, let's move on. It's a loss that we have to mourn and we have to find ways to move forward with and heal from. And I don't think enough people, when you're going through it, you're not thinking, okay, what's the next 5 steps? Whereas someone like you who's built a community, you can say, okay, come here, let's talk. Here's your next step. And that to me is powerful, because if you give somebody in panic mode 5 steps, they shut down.
Mm-hmm.
But if you say, call this person, we'll get you sorted, it helps. Now, one of the things that pains me, and I've seen this in almost every possible space, is all of these amazing organizations, they think they're like this compound out in the wilderness, and they put their flag and they put their wall up, and they don't look to see who else is out there. And it becomes very disjointed because, well, we're competing for government dollars.
Right. Yes, that is unfortunate. And I'm not in that position, so I, can be open and invite many in. I actually donate a lot of space in my magazine to organizations that are in the charitable, the nonprofit sectors. And so, that impacts my bottom line, but that fills the purpose that I'm trying to fulfill for myself as well. And a legacy really, we want to leave some kind of a legacy that is and a positive impact that we've created in the world, and that's just one way that I can maybe help connect those organizations that helps them with cost and visibility.
Well, and I see you as a bridge between them, and a much needed bridge, because I think, again, when you're in the trenches fighting the battle, you think, oh my God, I'm all alone. It's only me. But look up and there's Deena saying, hey, over here, there's reinforcements. Let's go.
And I want to speak too, Jeff, to what you mentioned when people are in that chaos, because especially if they're in fight mode, and if we can just have them take a breath and pause and think, okay, but if I can find a reasonable moment, I want to think, what's the tone, even not even the words, what feeling do I want to feel 5 years from now with my kids, my family, this co-parent, whatever it might be. And the way I approach this process right now, is that going to give us an opportunity to have a more calm outcome where it's a little more peaceful, and the majority of the rest of our lives is going to be spent in that zone versus this fight time right now. So how can we approach this, take a breath and get through this, and then have an outcome that, just sit in that. Even don't look at the 5 steps, just sit in that feeling you would like to be living in once you're out the other side. And what can you do today that will help create that on the other end?
I love it. And if I may add my 2 cents, I believe that networking can help solve anything. And my advice would be, if you're going through something difficult, find others doing the same, because the saying misery loves company is true, but also we're smarter and stronger together. So I love that you're building that community. How can people become part of what you do? How can they benefit from working with you? How can they support you?
Many ways. We actually are piloting a membership model right now with the magazine and the whole community. So very, very reasonable. People can find this on my website, and you have a monthly membership. You can cancel at any time, but it also includes tickets to the events, complimentary tickets, replays, the magazines, the newsletters. You'll be the first to know about anything that's coming out. And there's other perks. We'll have draws and things like this. We're always adding more. So that is one way. Subscribe to the magazine. You can also do that, or find it online. There's that's a new pilot. And then anybody who would like to be part of the community, as far as being on our team and featured on all of these platforms, as well as being the first person we're going to go to when we want to have a panel, or we're going to be offering presentations that corporate HR can have available, where you are talking to their employees. So that is a way that you can be in our community. And we have, I hate the word advertising, because they are paying for marketing and it's advertising, but I still have maintained that tone that the founder had created when I first came on board. It's empowering information that's available, and you can contact me. So here's that word "and" again. It's like, I want you to be able to have this information to help you through this. And if you're interested in talking to me more or asking questions, here's how you can get a hold of me. And so there's always very informative, empowering content there for people to take in. And if any of the service providers out there feel a call to be part of this community and be featured in this way, I'm really excited to feature you. And I don't know if I mentioned this in our conversation before we started recording, but we consistently rank as a top divorce magazine in the world, on the web, in Canada. Our blog, our podcast, all of them rank right up at the top. So there is an audience looking, obviously. We have over 10,000 downloads on the podcast and heard over 50 countries. The majority of our audience is in Alberta. So it's Alberta based. I'm local, I'm in Alberta. And we also then have another 25% of the audience is in Ontario, and then majority is Canada and beyond. And many of the service providers and these professionals in my community can help people around the world. You know, some of the lawyers, it's very regional.
Yeah.
Some of the finance is regional, but not all of it. So I've got people on my team that can help people even with finance around the world. So that's really amazing resources that are there.
All right. And now, final thing, what is your website?
Life Changes Mag, like mag.com.
Love it. And we will put that in the show notes. And I would also say reach out to Deena on LinkedIn. She is amazing and open. And I'm going to say no jerks allowed. It probably doesn't need to be said, but you know, if you're listening to this, you're probably not one. You're probably a go-giver like Deena and myself. But I think people who want to help people reach out. Is that fair?
Yes, I would love that.
Awesome. Well, Deena, I could talk to you all day. We got lots we could cover. And honestly, we've just scratched the surface of the word "and" because it's so powerful. Thank you for being a guest on the show today.
Thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to connect with your amazing audience.